Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. In this video, let's discuss what are conditional statements in Python and what's the use of those. So, conditional statements are otherwise known as decision making statements. If you want to relate to this our real life, even in our day-to-day life, we used to take some decisions, and based on those decisions, we used to decide what we should do next, right? So, in similar way, even in programming, we used to make some decisions, and based on those decisions we will execute some block of code. So that's the use of these conditional statements. So let's understand what's this and how to write these conditional statements. So I'm just writing a simple conditional statement like by using this if, and I'm giving this true here, boolean true here, and I mentioned this colon, and when I press enter you can see so it created a space. So this is called as indentation in Python. So if I write something print successful, you can see now I'm just given a statement like if this condition what I have given here is true, and for now I have given like if true means obviously it is true, right? So if this condition is true, print successful. So if I just run this code, you can see it printed successful. How we have to write this conditional statement means first we're gonna write this if, and we can mention whatever we want the condition. Here generally I have mentioned true here. In general case we don't mention this true directly. We used to use some expressions, and based on the evaluation of that expression, if it is true it will execute that statement. So that's how you write a simple conditional statement. And you can see here when I mentioned if true, I have given colon, right? And even here you can see I have given indentation. It automatically takes indentation. Here you can see the space here, right? This is called as indentation. Indentation is nothing but it specifies that this statement belongs to this if condition, this if statement. So that's the use of this indentation. And you don't need to mention space here. It automatically, if you give colon here and if you just press enter, it automatically create indentation. So that's indentation here, and that's how you generally write a general conditional statement. If I just give false in place of this, if I just give false, you can see it didn't executed this statement. So I'm giving this another statement outside this if block, print. I'm just giving print finished, and if I just executed first, if it will just check whether this condition is true. If that statement is true, it goes and execute that statement, and if that statement is false, it will print that next statement. And I have said you right, generally we don't use this false or something true in general writing program. So let's take an example. If you want to check whether a number is greater than a particular number or not, I'm just creating a variable like a is equal to 5, and I'm just giving a statement if a is greater than 3, print greater. So if I just execute the statement, you can see it print, since a is greater than 3, it comes into this conditional, and it printed this greater, right? Since we have given this out of this conditional, it also printed this finished. And even you can use here, I have used this greater than symbol, right? You can use whatever comparison operators you want, like greater than or equal. You can check equal to whether this 5 is equal to something or not, whether this 5 is not equal to something, or if it is greater than something or less than, or you can use whatever you want. And if you want to check comparison operators which we use in Python, you can just I have created a video on that. If you want, just I will give you a link for that video in the description. So that's about this if statement. And here we have used it, right? If a is greater than 3, print greater. And if this statement is false, for example, let's take if a is greater than 6, if I just given this statement, and if I just print, you can see it didn't print anything. So if this condition is false, like if the condition which we have given in if statement is false, so if you want to print something else, if this condition is false, so for that you can use else statement. So you can use else statement here, and even not only else statement, even you can use if a is less than 6, print smaller. So you can see it printed this smaller, right? So first it will check this condition, if whether this a is greater than 6 or not. Since it is false, it will just come to this statement and it will execute a less than 6, and it will see, since it returns true, it will execute this statement, print smaller. So that's why it printed smaller. Here you have to understand one thing, you can print using this if statement, but what's this disadvantage of using if means, generally if you just mention like multiple ifs, if you just go on mentioning multiple ifs, what Python check is, first it will check this condition, and after checking this condition it will again come to this statement and it will again check this statement, and it will goes on checking. So if you use this if statement, it will goes on checking. We are using most of the resources, right? We are just wasting the resources, right? So that's why instead of using this statement, this if statement, you can use else, and you don't need to mention any statement here. Else you can just mention, and you can see it prints smaller here. So that's the use of this else statement. So if a greater than 6, it will print greater, or else it will just print this statement. In previous case, it just check all the if statements. Here, since this statement is true and it will don't check any other statement, it will just directly comes to this else statement, and whatever there in this else statement, it will print that. So that's the use of this else statement here. And even you can mention multiple multiple if statements inside this. So if a greater than 6, print greater, and similarly if I want to use this if statement inside if, like if you want to use nested if, even you can use that. If a equal to 5, I just want to print equal, right? For even for this if statement, even you can use else here, print not equal. So you can just mention whatever you want. You can just write whatever conditional statements you want. In this way you can do it. And if I just execute this, you can see it will come if I have given a is equal to 5, right? And first it will check if a is greater than 6. So this condition is false, right? So it won't execute all the statements which are present in this if statement. So it will directly come to this else, and it will print this smaller. So that you have to understand. Even though if you write multiple if else block inside a particular if statement, it will just check all those things only if this particular main if statement is true, then only it will come to these statements, then it will try to execute this. So that you have to understand. And if you want to print multiple statements, like here I have given you right, I have used if a greater than 6, print greater. And if you want to use if you want to print multiple statement, you can use ELIF. It's known as ELIF is nothing but else if. So else if, I'm just giving a else if a is equal to 5, I'm just giving print equal, right? And similarly you can use multiple ELIF statements even. So first what it will do means, first it will just execute if a greater than 6, print greater, and since it is false, it won't come to this, it won't execute this, and again it will comes to this ELIF statements, and it will check whether this a is equal to 5 is true or not. Since it is true, it will print equal. Here even though you given else print smaller, it won't execute that statement, right? Here this else statement will be executed only if all the statement, like all the statements which we have given here, all these conditions are false, then only it will come to else and it will print. So I hope you got an overall idea of how to write if, what is ELIF, what is else, and what are all those things. And you have to understand one thing, and even in other programming languages like C, we used to use like switch case statement. We used to write switch case statement, right? Switch case is nothing but multiple statements, right? If this condition true, execute this, and if this is true, like that we used to write switch case statements, right? In Python we don't write this switch case statements here. We just use this if, ELIF, else block to write this switch case type of statements here in Python. Even you can use logical operators here, like I'm just giving if a is greater than 4 and a is less than 6. If I want to specify this and I want to print some statement right, so I want to print some statement like print true, or otherwise else I want to print like false. So you can see if I just execute this statement, it returns true, right? So if what it will do means, first it will check a greater than 4. Since 5 is greater than 4, it will just, that condition is true. And operator, right? We have used AND operator, so it means AND operator returns true only if both the conditions are true. So a is less than 4 and this 5 is less than 6, right? So due to that, it returns true. So it will come to this statement and it will print true. That even you can use this, even instead of this you can use OR statement even. So if I'm just giving a is less than 2, right? So even in this condition, even now it returns true, right? So OR statement means it returns true if any one of the condition is true. So here you can see if a is greater than 4, that's true, but a less than 2, even though this condition is false, since this condition is correct, so it returns true here. So you can use whatever you want, like conditional statements or logical operators, or you can use comparison operators, whatever you want you can use, and you can just evaluate the, like you can check the expression and you can use these conditional statements. And not only in this way, even in other format you can write this if statement. So that called as shorthand if, right? Let's take this example which I have taken here, same example. If a greater than 4, I'm just, right, if a greater than 4, you can see even in this format you can write the complete if statement in single statement. In previous case we have written other line, right? So even instead of that you can just write everything in single statement. So that's called as shorthand if. And even you can write like if else in single statement. So for that, first we have to mention whatever we have to print statement. For that we will mention first. You can see I want to print true if a greater than 4, and so I'm just printing the statement first, print true if a greater than 4, and you don't need to mention any colon here for writing this both if else in single statement. You don't need to mention any colon, and I'm just giving like else print false. So if I just execute this statement, you can see it returns true here. If I just use 2, since this 2 is not greater than 4, it's less than 4, it will print the statement, the condition which is in else statement. So in this way you can write both if and else in a single statement. So these are called as shorthand notations. And I've said you before, right, this conditional statements will be executed based on this true or false, right? And you have to understand one thing, like in Python, what are all statements can be considered as false, and what are all statements can be considered as true. So let's understand even that. So we can use this for false statement. So if I just use, right, we have already discussed false statement, right? So if I just give if none print if block executed, or I can use else print if block not executed. So if I just mention this statement, you can see since I have given none statement here, it considered as this statement is considered as false statement. It won't come inside this statement, this block, and it won't print this. It will directly comes to this else statement and it will print if block not executed. So even you can use, instead of this none, even you can use like 0. You can see even if you use 0 here, it doesn't execute this if block here. It directly comes to this else and it printed this statement which is present in else block. And even you can use empty sequences, you can use empty string here. So even in this case it will consider as false statements. It will just execute this else block. And not only this, you can use this empty tuple, or you can use empty list, right? Whatever you want, these empty sequences, using this 4, you can just make a statement as false statement. Except from these 4, remaining all will be considered as like true statements. For example, if you just mention something in this list 1 2 3 1 23 etc. If you just run this code, you can see this this printed the statement which is in if block, right? So, and similarly if I use some tuple, and if I just mention something 1 comma 2, you can see then the statement which is in if block will be executed. Even we have used 0, right? Before we have used 0 for false statement, right? Even if I use some other number like 1, if I use, even if I use 1, it will be printed, the statement which is in if block will be printed. So even this is considered as true. So except from these 4, remaining all the statements, remaining all opposite of all these 4 will be considered as true statements in Python. So that's about this video. I hope you understood how to create conditional statements and how to use that conditional statements in what are all conditional statements in Python, how to write if, elif, else and nested if, how to write all those things. And I hope you understood everything about conditional statements. If you understood the video, like the video and feel free to share your feedback in the comment section. Thanks for watching.